everyone. Welcome back to Streaming Media 2020, Streaming Media Connect 2024. I am your host and media cartographer, Eyevinn Shapiro, hosting a whole week, which is coming to a close today at Streaming Media Connect 2024 with 5 really great sessions all day. If you missed any of the sessions this week, all of them will be up at Streaming Media's YouTube channel sometime next week. Steve will put that link in the chat. Look to the chat for other links like bios of the panelists, but also information that might be dropped during the session. Also, look there for the rest of today's agenda for Streaming Media Connect. Steve will drop that in there. And look in the chat for information, a registration page, and an agenda for Streaming Media NYC, our big 3-day conference in New York City, the center of the media universe, says me, at the Intercontinental Hotel, May 20th through the 22nd. I am hosting and co-curating with Steve, but I'll be there active the whole time, doing a keynote. But you'll look at the agenda, and there's tons of really great sessions on all 3 days, different tracks around career development and AI and social video and the changing world of ad tech on CTV. Take a look. There'll be a link or a code for a discount pass. Take a look at that. Look at the agenda. If you'd like to sit on any of these panels, we still are filling some empty seats there. So reach out to either Steve or myself, and we'll chat you up on that. Some more paperwork. We'll bring our panelists and our moderator to the table in a second. But if you were the first to name that tune and that band in the chat and are here at the end, you will win a $50 gift card from Amazon for a courtesy of Steve Nathans-Kelly. Also, if you stay for 2 or more sessions all week, you're automatically entered to win an Osbot Tail Air 4K PTZ streaming camera. It's a cool new piece of tech. We will notify you by email. I don't know how you're automatically entered, but there you go. So without further ado, I think that's all my paperwork. Have a good day here today at Streaming Media Connect. I will bring our moderator to the table, Magnus Svensson from Eyevinn Technology. Magnus, how are you today?
Good morning. Actually sitting in Sweden, so it's getting towards the end of the day for us.
All right, well,
we have more Swedes in the panel, so we're getting a little bit international in this panel. So
there's sunlight in there. I'll leave you to it. Break a leg on the panel. I'll talk
Thank you. See you later. So welcome to the panel around cloud and cloud control and innovation workflows in the cloud. And I will bring on a very interesting panel here with a lot of different panelists that will come from with different perspectives into this discussion. So I think it's better we'll let them in one by one and let them present themselves. So let's start with Corey Smith. Welcome. Tell me a bit about yourself and what you're doing.
Good morning. Yes, my name is Corey Smith. I'm a Senior Director of Advanced Production Technology at CBS Sports, which is a fancy way of saying I do cloud stuff. So from that perspective, we have a lot of different both native and hybrid workflows, and hope to get into some of that here today.
Excellent. So let's go a little bit south into Brazil and welcome Jonas.
Hello, Magnus. Many thanks for having us today here. It should be a great panel. Here I'm the digital and products and platform manager regarding also for advertising. Basically, we get all the content that we produce in global from broadcasts, since in live or VOD to be distributed into our digital products. So we have a lot of events, free-to-air channels, pay TV channels, and also FAST, so we can leverage our content into the digital world. So many thanks for having us today.
Excellent. Now moving back to Europe and to my home turf, we welcome Martin.
Thank you, Magnus. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I manage the broadcast tech team at the Swedish branch of the ESL Faceit Group. We are a esports company and a tournament organizer. So we have both customer-facing products and we work as a production company in the industry.
Excellent. Thank you, Martin. And Eric, please join us and tell me who you are.
Wonderful. Greetings from New York City. Great to join this fine panel. Eric Bolton, Vice President of Business Development with Zixi. We are a live streaming software-defined platform and lead basically most of the largest brands in the world. and have been doing this for 15 years. So it's fun that this has now finally become mainstream and we can now share best practices.
That's good. You have some experience. Last but not least, John, welcome.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Magnus. My name's John Porterfield. I'm a webcast producer focused on cloud productions like many of you on the panel, streaming productions, both on-site, but primarily working on a lot of the cloud and remote productions. Speak in the industry with others and work on focusing, developing remote productions, different things for clients, advising, consulting for the Social 180 group.
Excellent. As you can hear, we have a very experienced and good panel to start with here. So what I will do is I will go through myself. Maybe I should introduce myself. I'm Magnus Svensson, work as a streaming media consultant from Stockholm, Sweden, called a company called Eyevinn Technology. So today we will talk about cloud and cloud streaming, and we decided that we'll focus a lot on the live part of it because that's the complicated part, and we'll go through the different parts of a live workflow in the cloud. Start with a little bit around production. We'll talk about playout, and we talk about distribution, and we also have a different flavor and angle on that with Martin from esports, which we'll be bringing on later on. So, and we'll traverse a few things along the way. If you have questions, please put them into the Q&A session. I'll try to bring them into the discussion as soon as they're applicable. Otherwise, we'll leave a few minutes in the end for questions as well. So please type in any questions you have. So let's start. Maybe you can, John, as you mentioned, you work with a lot of remote production. Maybe you can walk us quickly through the workflows of remote production in the cloud.
Yeah, so currently for remote production, typically that in kind of a couple of different ways to do it. That way, a lot of people are working through it now. So that might be a remote guest, that might be a fully virtual where we have a connection from their location coming through a platform. Let's just take a cloud-based vision mixing tool like from LiveView Studio or Epiphan or one of the other ones out there. There's many solutions right now in the industry, and pull that guest in remotely via their location, could be at home, could be anywhere, into a cloud-based production where we can vision mix and then deliver that to whatever destinations they want to go to. For as an example, a virtual walk event for a healthcare nonprofit, as well as taking more professional broadcasting type elements, devices like what we call contribution encoders or bonded type systems, where we can take a live feed from on-site. Just like they were doing at the Super Bowl, right? Take that feed from on-site, pull that into the cloud, orchestrate it, mix it, and then deliver that out either to some destinations like a content delivery network or social networks, wherever it needs to go to, as well as back to the ground to a remote studio and where it's being obviously master mixed and whatever they need to deliver there. So a lot of different moving parts to that, but that enables the virtual team from the CG side, computer graphics, to the audio. I think that's the beauty of the cloud, is that, where we've transitioned to now is having everybody, kind of the experts, if you will, that would traditionally be on site, remotely participate as part of the virtual production team. And so we do that. So the good news is that a lot of these tools have ways now to orchestrate and be able to do everything we need to do that you would typically do on site. It just comes down to the type of solution you want to use.
Excellent. Eric, I see you, as you mentioned, you've been in the industry for 15 years, and you've probably seen the start of cloud production and until to now. So maybe what has changed during your 15 years, and what are the latest technology when it comes to moving the video into the cloud?
Well, no, it's interesting. So Zixi is 15 years, and I am unfortunately more closer to 30, but we keep working and watching it. I'm dating myself on that front. But I noticed, and we were talking in the preamble about, say, Super Bowl and pieces of that nature. And Zixi was very early on in pioneering the idea that you could use the internet, unmanaged IP, that you could manage live production broadcast. And there was a ton of skepticism. And I was on a panel, not unlike this one, about 6 years ago, when a fine gentleman who I known as a former client said that there will never be a Super Bowl on IP and etc. And I can assure you that we were carrying all kinds of signals over the last weekend and on that part. So I think what you're watching now is what had started as lower tier or lower value content has moved all the way to the top tiers. the amount of channels and the digital carve-out rights have now enabled contents in partner A to go to content partner B. Like the OTT levels of cross connect have gone exponential. And from our perspective, you know, Zixi, we're in the transport business. We're going to pick something up, we're going to process it and deliver it. But watching things move off of satellite, away from fiber and sort of bound pieces to true cloud acquisition and delivery, that is absolutely the future. And it's been very interesting to watch how now fully mainstream that is across ranges of partners who are sending content to people who never would have received it, and the amount of channels that are then being managed by that. So the next phase is this is now becoming a game of scalability, agility, and how can companies manage this thousands of streams versus hundreds of channels, but with the limitations of human resources.
Absolutely. Corey, will there be a Super Bowl in the cloud?
I want to say yes, because I'm hedging my bets, but you know, Super Bowl was already in the cloud this last go around. I mean, CBS did a lot of IP delivery for Super Bowl over our channel Paramount Plus, and you know, in some ways, we were able to hyper scale. You know, with Paramount Plus as one of our primary streaming platforms, CBSSports.com, etc., for some other sports. But I think that we kind of, when we say Super Bowl in cloud, do we mean full Remy production? Do we mean all 165 cameras backhauling and switching in cloud? I don't think that we're quite there yet to do that kind of level of production in cloud. But I think that we've started seeding kind of the conversations on how we get there and what the flow looks like. When you look at the truck level production, it's basically IP-based workflows. So we can easily transition some of those IP workflows that are happening in trucks. To Eric's point about the transport pieces, a lot of that stuff is already coming natively IP out of the truck back to a centralized facility for processing and distribution anyway. So it's really a much more of a hybrid conversation these days than it was certainly 4 or 5 years ago. But we're kind of on the precipice of that type of snowball effect of like how cloud is going to help us, and the IP-based workflows, are already here.
Yeah. So what about you, Jonas, in Brazil? How far have you come into the transition of cloud and the hybrid workflows?
Yeah, Global is on a journey to the cloud since 2019. So we are moving some workflows to the cloud. Basically, the live production of small and medium events, we are doing almost 100% in the cloud. We are getting a lot of lessons learned, like Corey said, that we need to put this on the table and start to discuss this for the premium events. So on premium events, we are in more a hybrid way. We are getting all the advantages from the on-premises and all the advantage that we have on the cloud when you need scale. So, and for playout, we have also 18 channels running in the cloud right now, and we are moving on to put more channels. But the premium ones, we are still looking at and studying all the data and all the stuff, so we can be more mature in technical way, in financial way, so we can have these more hard workloads to the cloud. The only one that is 100% since the beginning of the content to the delivery is the fast channels. So fast channels, they have a full circle of income, revenue, expenses. They have profits. So we put everything there on the cloud with some partners. And we also have right now 10 channels. We are going to increase this number of channels during the next years, because I believe that we are learning a lot with this type of stuff, with a lot of events. But the main ones, the premium ones, stays on premises, and we are getting some parts on the cloud and some parts on premise. So Sometimes maybe you're gonna have a whole workflow of a live feed, a live streaming, a live event in the cloud. But maybe next year or maybe to the end of this year, who knows? I'm thinking that I'm going to learn a lot with you guys, how we reach there.
Martin, a lot of things are similar, and you're coming from a little bit of a different angle with a little bit the same challenges, but you have some main differences when it comes to distribution. So maybe you can walk us through a little bit what is similarity and what are the differences with your type of streaming events.
Yeah, so our primary modes of distribution, or where our content is consumed, is not in our own platforms primarily. We have a few of our own as well. So mostly we will push our content to Twitch or to YouTube or to somewhere else where our customers are, our viewers are. With that said, we do bounce in the cloud always on the way in there. After encoding, which we do as close to production as possible, we bounce in the cloud for ingest and archiving and for orchestration.
Cool. So looking at these workflows and these type of things, you talked about there is a transition. Jonas mentioned that it's moving parts of it and there are plans to move everything step by step. Corey, what are the examples of the workflows that can be done more efficiently and should be in the cloud, and what maybe should not be in the cloud and maybe more done on-prem?
It's a great question. I think that, this panel and a number of panels that I've been on and over this last several years tries to tackle that same question. It's like, when is it ready to go to cloud? And I always kind of like, I guess, preface the question by saying, like, when do you want to go to the cloud? Like, when is it safe for the business to make that transition, right? So it's really more that, gaining confidence in cloud is actually the platform you want to use to scale your business. And obviously there's a CapEx and OpEx kind of conversation there to be had with both your finance group and your production teams, et cetera. But a lot of the higher tier events are still going to be very much centered around the truck world, because that's where the confidence that's where people feel like they can walk into a truck and it's this very same show as they did last year at the same time. It's not revolving into working on a new workflow or a new piece of technology. And a lot of the cloud stuff is emerging tech, so you don't really see a huge push to do these large scale REMI environments. Like, it'll be a while before we do a Masters or we do another Super Bowl on a cloud-based system without gaining that confidence. But I think that the REMI model, as we continue to bite off those chunks, so to speak, and gain the confidence, within 5 years, maybe we're doing 165 camera switching in cloud. But I don't know that the tech evolution is quite there yet that breeds that confidence. So that said, what we've tried to do, at least on the sports side here at Paramount, is using cloud to our advantage in terms of doing distribution, packaging, the captions, play out. The Galaza network that's on the screen behind me is 100% digital native, digital linear network. So the only thing live that's coming in to this network is essentially our studio shows from our facilities. Whether it's a live match coming from a European provider, or it's something that's coming in on satellite or baseband, it all gets converted at some point to IP to our cloud-based workflows. So as we have these studio and desk shows, they're just providing contribution to a cloud-native based playout and distribution infrastructure. So the things that we've been able to kind of take on is really kind of the master control and beyond operations right now, as we continue to build kind of these hybrid workloads to focus on things like, do we need craft edit in the facility anymore? Can we actually migrate our asset management system to cloud? Can we've already proven with Zixi and other providers out there And Martin would be the first one to say that a lot of the digital transport, the stream aspect, the packaging of that, whether it's going to YouTube or Twitch or somebody else's channel, all of that stuff has been around for almost a decade or more now. So, as we continue to kind of bite off the low-hanging fruit, we're going to get closer and closer to kind of that true REMI model where we're actually starting to do live switching in cloud. And I think that's the next frontier, is how do we help the production folks do a better show about using cloud technology in which to do it, and not in a replacement standpoint, but as an augmentation to their existing environment. Because, quite frankly, we need to have, because of the nature of live, whether it's sports or not, there are certain things that cloud can help us with, and there's certain things that it just makes sense to still do it on ground-based, production at a venue.
Exactly. Eric, do you anything you want to add to that picture, and what is typical working best in the cloud and what is typically not a bound for cloud or cloud yet?
Well, it's interesting. So Corey clearly, is talking very specifically about the production and the generation of an event, and that has different attributes between on-prem and what is, as he said very well, cloud augmented that could help. But in our world, from a Zixi perspective, traditionally you had had very distinct group that was going to traditional, US nomenclature, MVPDs, and folks that would be cable head ends and MSOs. And then in contrast, you have all of the new digital parts. The thing that's working very well in cloud is once we have a finished show, whether it's a front haul, back haul, etc., the idea that I can contribute that once into a cloud workflow, and from there, manage it out to any number of partners, and you can process, you normalize, you manage things like PIDs, like all of the things that are required to make the partner taker. We've been saying this along, like most people are now delivering to other partners. I mean, Paramount Plus licenses to a number of different platforms that in theory are all trying to reach different eyeballs. So from our perspective, this idea that you can globalize, normalize, and push all of that content out, it means that you can generate different types of content and then make it actually go to very specific destinations in certain ways. And the things that are coming up, our next frontier, as opposed to cloud switching, is really take things like SCUDdy 224 and SCUDdy 250, and the idea that you're actually managing and augmenting the fast channels and the ad side of that from a cloud perspective. And this is a way to actually monetize and generate the revenue that's required as all of these different rights carve-outs are played out globally.
Yeah. Jonas, you mentioned that you're gradually moving things to the cloud, and once you feel confident, what is sort of the trigger point for confidence and moving things to the cloud? Is it a cost thing, or is it a confidence thing, or is it a technology barrier?
I believe these three, and I would add a fourth, maybe culture, because broadcasters are not 100% with the future with the cloud. So there is a lot of things that all the people need to learn a lot and transform themselves into with new skills. I believe that for technical perspective, there are some events like soccer games that maybe when we leverage this to the cloud, we are going to increase latency. So here at Global, we have our own VPN. Here is everything on premises. And this is a good point for us so we can reduce the latency of the soccer games. Soccer games here at Brazil, all the fans, they are really crazy. They watch every type of game. So latency maybe is something that for the technical part is something to be aware of. And also
we have a question around latency and what are the latencies you see. So maybe we can bring that to the discussion. What latencies do you see today, and where would you like to be?
Right now, we have maybe 10 seconds of latency, depends of the device. And we believe that maybe 3 seconds to 2 seconds is gonna be a good latency thing that we can afford. It's easier to have a time delay into the broadcast side, but all the teams are putting a lot of effort to reduce the latency. Because when you do this, you need to change everything on your pipeline. Since when you start to encode the video to deliberate it, and once you do all this on-prem or cloud thing, you need to change every piece of it, and all the connectivity between. And here in Brazil is there is something that is different. And in America, all the cloud providers are maybe centralized at São Paulo or Rio. They are not expanded well throughout the country. And we have a continental country. We not have a lot of POPs of these cloud providers expanded here yet. And that's why we have our own CDN that is split in every state here at Brazil, supported by our affiliates and ISPs. And this helps us to be more on the edge and have more control of the latency that we would like to offer to our customers.
John, what's your view on what is suitable for cloud and not suitable for cloud when it comes to maybe focusing on production side? Are there things that still are done better on-prem, or are we mature enough to move everything to the cloud now?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Corey and with everybody here. I think, when it comes to the top tier events that Corey brought up and we've discussed about the Super Bowl or some major event, you still have the necessity to have a team there to produce it, make sure things are done to just from a quality and in terms of that content. I would say that, in the hybrid model, you can start to then take certain pieces of that production and push it into the cloud, or use another opportunity where people are trying to get into it to create some other new content to drive towards their online audience, going to like an OTT platform or some other type of destination. And that in that instance or example would be like I did this week, where we have a booth at a location at a major conference. You have the speaker. We're taking a live to air broadcast, pulling it into the cloud. We're vision mixing to a point, or we're letting the local team do what they need to do. And then we're obviously working with the OTT provider. We're all in comms. We're all actively communicating on the production. So I think that's a good opportunity to get into it, right? So I think there's steps to get there. And I think that's the key part of what I think we're all kind of hitting on is the planning, right? And then validating and testing the different pieces of that. So I think the secondary type experiences or another add-on component that you can produce, get that done really well, is a great opportunity. And, I did with one of my clients, we did last year was a virtual walk event. The host was in their location at their home. We pulled them into the production and, vision mixing. We had somebody from Scotland or actually from the UK managing the CG, but somebody in the East Coast is managing the graphics. And we're delivering that to their platforms, be it YouTube, Facebook, or wherever they need to go to and their website. So there's different opportunities to get, I think, is kind of make that entry point before you go, 100%. I think that, I think there's obviously some decisions that have to be made in the production. What's going to add value, and can we do this, and can we reduce the number of people we have on site and move them into a virtual team concept? And that's kind of been, some things that come to mind that when I talk to clients.
Martin, you mentioned that sort of you started from a little bit different angle. Do you see a transition to the cloud, or do you believe that you will stay in sort of the same mode and be in a hybrid world for the coming future?
I think hybrid is definitely the future for the next few years. Cloud is super suitable for, I would say, for mid-tier productions where you can have a nice scalability. If you want it, you can scale up and have more and more of them. For example, if you need concurrency. Very often, though, when we do events, and then the Super Bowl is a bit extreme, it's worth a lot of money, and it's a fairly controlled environment. But if we come into a venue, the largest risk will be the first mile of connectivity. And if we were to pull an esports event, can easily have 100 cameras and get that in. Once it's in the cloud, fine. But getting it up into the cloud is still a risk. And it's a bit of an unknown often when we come into a venue. What connectivity is there? And very rarely it's feasible to start digging in fiber yet, at least. So I think for the larger events, and it's still not there, or it at least carries a bit of risk.
So if I could talk on the esports thing real quick, because I spent 4.5 years at Activision Blizzard managing Overwatch League and Call of Duty League. During the course of the pandemic, the shift to cloud was a real thing. Like a lot of other broadcasters, we were kind of thrusted into this new world where, like, we got to figure it out. We got to get it back in the air. We have ad dollars sitting on the table that are burning up, right? We need to figure out this problem, right? And it wasn't even really a technical problem. It was a confidence issue. It's like, can we pull the people out of the traditional mode that they're used to operating in and drop them in this like virtualized environment where they're now working out of their homes, cutting a show. And that was I think the challenge for us during that time is like wrapping our head around like, what is the technology available? What can we do to get to that level? But we ended up, towards the end there, 2021, 2022, where 100% of the production was kind of in the cloud, and it kind of started transitioning to this kind of hybrid approach where we had, esports engine doing some stuff out of their facility in Ohio, and a lot of the distribution was still done in cloud and whatnot. But that was when we were kind of starting to get back into this kind of idea of venues and being kind of socially isolated on stage and that kind of thing. But to Martin's point, we were operating in a world where we had tens of dozens of cameras hanging out, whether it was the player cameras when you're the digital fly-throughs, following the action within the sports, the talking heads, the announcers and the talent that needed to kind of call the event, to just the kind of the audience reactions and stuff. And so it was critical for us to get back to an event-based operation where we actually had the interaction of people in an audience, because that's how you like to enjoy sports. You're all caught up in the moment, and it's the passion that people have when they come into, whether or not it's an NFL game or it's a Call of Duty League game. You still have this passionate fan base, and you still have the emotions that drive during certain courses of that entertainment experience. And some of that doesn't transition to cloud very well when you're 100% virtualized. So we do have to keep in mind kind of what is the experience supposed to be. Is it at home experience, or are you building a show around bringing in the audience, to that event, right? So, we always said in esports, like, we're actually cutting the show for the home audience. Well, there's a whole other section of people that are sitting at that venue. They don't really care what's on YouTube or Twitch at that point in time, but there's two different shows being produced. And I think that, the esports world and sporting in general is kind of that same model. It doesn't really matter the content that's being generated or the production that's being had. It's the same experience. It's the same kind of fan base driven kind of excitement of what's happening on the field, whether it's digital or reality.
We have a question coming in that I think actually you mentioned during our pre-talk, Corey, around the break point between OPEX, CAPEX, and these type of things. How do you see on that? How do you calculate a OPEX, CAPEX break point, and where is the tip over?
Well, I think that we're still trying to experiment with that, right? So for us, it's kind of a slope that you can go one way or the other. Obviously, cloud can be very expensive if you're not watching kind of how you're assembling your infrastructure and how you're running it and managing it. It becomes a much different scenario when you're being billed by the hour on a meter, whether or not you've already made the CapEx purchase and it sits in a truck or a fly pack somewhere. So you can certainly, play games with finance about writing gear off and depreciation values and that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it's a different financial mindset of how you build cloud-based workflows, because you have to go into this idea that those light switches get turned off at the end of the event, as opposed to the typical model where you're just leaving a truck parked for 4 days in a row and it's just constantly on. So it's a different mindset, and it's a different way of rationalizing, your production costs in a way where you have to be paying attention to OPEX in a much more deliberate manner, I think.
Yeah. Any comments from you on around that, Eric? Do you see where the break point is coming in? I think you're muted.
Sorry, I'm on mute. It's an interesting point. So to Corey's point about, in production, what gear do you buy? Does a fly pack sit? But once you are in the cloud, the world is very OpEx and the big element of the entire TCO is going to be egress. And how does one actually spin up and spin down resources? So the cloud is very elegant in terms of how you can do it. What we see is a lot more focus on resource utilization, scheduling, automation. Sort of in the beginning, you have an event, but you'll have a slate. So you're actually linearizing those pieces and they have a relative cost. But as pieces go, and I have several large sports leagues that are all pushing into this, and it's interesting to watch, at least in the North American model, the major sports leagues, like in hockey and baseball, are all pressing into the cloud. This will be very much based on turning on resources and turning them off. And I think in general, it's interesting that the industry is used to having a fixed infrastructure, whether it's a satellite or pieces, and we know what clouds cost. They're very effective, they're very agile, but they need to be run, managed, scheduled, monitored. But I do think that you're actually going to be able to show what a true return on investment is against the money in that outlay, because you'll understand what your true costs are. You can map that against the actual ad revenue, and see things in a way with a visibility that actually hasn't been in the industry for the last 20, 30 years.
Oh. Another aspect that I think we usually forget as well is that's around skill set of the teams and learning new workflows and these type of things. Do you want to comment on that, John? How do you see that, and how do you bump into that in the industry?
Yeah, so I think that's obviously one of the many areas of decision making and seeing the traditional roles of production teams, camera operators, audio, the various people that are kind of comprised of the whole team itself. So there's the opportunity of kind of the transition point of not seeing as the downside of it as an opportunity to take what traditionally would be doing, where we move that role into a new type of format structure where it gives them an opportunity to grow their skill set, right? And as we see technology, technology as a whole is a disruptor, right? And it changes the behavior and what we're all talking about and the various components of cloud. And I think the opportunity for a lot of these people, a lot of folks in production that I run into, is an opportunity to show them there's an opportunity to learn, see how everything's working, get them excited about the opportunity where they traditionally maybe were doing capture, maybe they have a particular role they've done over the number of years. And we've seen that, especially with what happened over the past several years, where people had to transition from being on-site, going fully virtual, and help show them that there's an opportunity to grow their own area of contribution. And the good news, I think, is that the community at large, there's plenty of opportunities to learn and grow. And I think that's what I'm excited about. If I take what I've done over the years in technology and just doing what I do, I'm constantly amazed about the resources and things that people can get plugged into to learning and understand to improve what they might transition into as, from a cloud-based architecture or some other element in the process. So I think there's, I try to work with people because I think we're all working on towards the same goal, and that is to build good quality, right, and scale the operation of the production. And so it's that opportunity to work with people. So I don't, I look at it as an opportunity, not so much the downside of it, but an opportunity to grow and learn.
Excellent. Moving into the technology a little bit and the workflows and a lot of people talk about cloud in connection to microservices. How do you see on that, Martin, when it comes to building the pieces together in microservices with adapting the workflows or the technology to the workflows or the workflows to the technology?
I think it's the real promise of cloud-based workflows. That we can abstract the technology away a bit and focus more on functions. It's in theory completely possible to cherry pick, to use for example, use 6C into the cloud and cherry pick your flavor of frame rate conversion and then get out of there. And we also have you can start looking at things as functions. And it used to be that if a producer wanted 2 extra VTs during a production, you generally would say no, because the video server is very expensive. Here now we can actually spin up and using the OpEx model, just take the cost on that production. And it's very promising.
You're nodding, Corey. Any?
Well, I think esports has got a lot of the traditional broadcasters kind of beat in terms of technology. I mean, we're still working in an environment where it's very high frame rate because we're capturing video coming off of a computer, right? So 60 frames per second or 120 or 144 is all kind of just, that's native. The game output is doing that. So when you talk about like doing frame rate conversions and that kind of thing, it's like, when is the regular broadcast linear world going to catch up to getting off interlace, right? So in all the cloud workflows, we have to take all that interlace feed that comes in, convert it to 60 anyways, and for distribution, because when you're dealing with an IP-based workflow, interlace doesn't fly anymore. So as the consumption continues to change and more content is being pushed IP-wise, because you only have so many finite space on the traditional linear model, you're going to have to up your game in terms of the technology delivery path. So, I'm hoping that within the next, 4 to 5 years, we figure out how to get some of these broadcast networks into a progressive based frame world. But esports has been leading the charge for close to a decade now on some of that tech front.
Yeah. Jonas, you mentioned a couple of hurdles on your infrastructure in Brazil when it comes to cloud, the spread, and the number of POPs and CDNs and these type of things. So how do you see the microservices or the components coming together, and how do you mitigate those things, and how do you see that moving forward?
This is a complex thing to look at, but here we have a team that is really focused on a PaaS infrastructure based on open source, that is Sudo. So this can abstract all things that behaves about the infrastructure. So if an application is running inside Sudo, all the developers, DevOps, and so on can focus on what they need to do regarding the broadcast, regarding the streaming or transcoding, and so on. And this platform, how can I say it, can guarantee us that we can move all the workloads to a cloud that is our first partner, but we can also move to a second, third, and be a more omni-cloud perspective of usage. For developing, we need to use at US because it's cheaper, but when we have some current circumstances and features and needs that we need to do, that we need to have to retrieve the file quickly, to deliver the video faster, we use everything here at the regions that are available at Brazil or at Latin America. So here we are trying to abstract the microservices and the infrastructure using this type of technology, but there are also some hard requirements, like Cora spoke about 6CP and 4K. They need to use all the resources of the infrastructure, all the bare metal, and for these workloads is more difficult to move into microservices and into multiple clouds for us right now. But we are trying to evolve on this, and also with the telecommunication network and security team, creating foundations to every cloud partner that we have. So we do not use like with the public rules. We have all global setups and global foundation rules that can give anyone more freedom to use the cloud without being concerned about what is the infrastructure, where is it, and so on.
Yeah. We're getting a couple of questions around automation in this field and possibilities for automation. Maybe you can spin on that, Jonas, a bit. How much do you automate when it comes to the workflows?
We automate everything that we can, because we want to run a lot of workflows with like a people-less approach. Because we believe that all the people needs to make effort to do better stuff and more noble stuff. So we basically automate everything that we can using scoring markers, using frame references of some images that can start or stop an event, and also for do some DVR or start streaming all the live content that we have. And also we have a team that is AI ops, that is focusing using AI to all the operations that we have. So we keep these people developing things and tools and services to push some notification or alerts if something is going to get wrong, or also doing some job or some task that can be easily taken by a machine. But there is a team that is looking on everything 24/7. But everything that we can automate, we do it because it's gonna save us time for us to do other stuff that is more important to the business.
Okay. I think a couple of times we mentioned about stream decoration, scatter markers, and we also get a couple of questions around that. So maybe Eric, I think you mentioned it in the beginning as well. What can be done with scatter markers and decorations to facilitate automation and smoother workflows?
No, it's interesting, and it dovetails to the microservices part, APIs, etc. So we manage and run off Scuddy 35. I saw that in the question comments all the time. And we're watching the industry begin to add in what was more traditional across the 224 for regionalization, programming, and the 250, not to get too technical on this group. But the idea that you're going to manage the time code and run across it in the IP world, it's becomes simple math, but it is mission critical. And everything becomes interoperability between systems. As Jonas was saying, we are watching scheduling events. There are different scheduling systems. There are different systems that manage within the Scuddy realm. All of those have to work in concert, and all of those work between API calls and different data transfers. And while file-based workflow has had metadata established now for a long time, the live stream metadata fields and the data requirements of that are now changing. I mean, they've existed, but now they're finally being implemented in a cloud-based model. So very interesting to watch, and that's kind of going on in real time.
Yeah, I was going to just jump onto that. I think that's an important element of transition now on the Scuddy 35, because I think, just some of the things I've dealt with over the past 6 months or so, of seeing the work towards a broader adoption between various entities, the vendors, the industry ones that produce the solutions, even going to the OTT platforms, because I think that's an important one of doing some kind of insertion during a live event in particular, right, where you've reached a certain time period and you've got ticket ad break, right, basically, right, and there's and having something through the entire process. So I think that's an emerging area of the market space that is quickly developing, and there's obviously the need to create some kind of an orchestration workflow end to end to deliver that.
Definitely interesting. If I could just take a couple seconds there. So we, on the IP generated side, our distribution is all 35 to client, and client side, DAI type thing. But for Super Bowl and the workflow we did for the HDR workflow, it was all server side ad insertion. So it's really kind of like, hedging your bets on like where the commercial inventory is. Obviously for Super Bowl and those kind of larger events, you're actually selling the inventory that you're shipping within the broadcast, and you're finding room for the local avails to come through at some point. But for a total digital linear model, we've kind of adopted this idea that we're just going to, decorate it for, 35 markers, and we're going to send it downstream, and, client side is going to fill it. However, the ad team, the ad ops guys have designed the ad fulfillment to be to occur regionally. So it's kind of like we set it and forget it, but then there's this other workflow where it's highly intensive, where we're actually curating the inventory going into the broadcast. So there's two schools of thought in our world.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting area, and I think we're getting towards the end, and I see a couple of questions around latency. So I think we need to comment on latency. It's an interesting topic when it comes to cloud workflows and live events as well. And I don't know, maybe Corey can continue on that discussion. What are the latency issues we have, and what are the latencies we're facing?
So yeah, I mean, latency is a real thing. We're 1 to 2 seconds from ground to cloud, but then it's the other encoding, the legacy distribution and packaging stuff that's adding additional, in some cases 30 to 45 seconds as it goes through whatever encoding workflow and packaging upstream that it has to go through. I think that there's an opportunity for us to diffuse a lot of that repackaging pieces, getting to basically common use of an origin packager, if you will. If we can figure out commonality on the client side to actually snap to in terms of standards. Right now, everybody kind of implements different things at different levels, if you will, but there's not a high adoption from what I've been able to see of low latency HLS. There's not a lot of transport that's trying to shrink that last mile delivery time frame. Amazon bought a technology called Sai a couple of years ago, which did client retiming, it was a brilliant piece of technology. But it's those type of innovations that we need to kind of provide on the TV, the glass side, is to retime that. And there was another question about betting and stuff. And until we get to that near real time kind of broadcast kind of standard on the client side for IP streaming, I think there's going to be once you start messing with people's money, it's a whole different game. So
yeah,
latency is going to have to be an issue.
Martin, you have latency challenges, but you also have a little bit of different latency challenges than others, maybe when it comes to interaction with the players and these type of things. So how do you see on latency, and what's your challenges?
Most often it's most for the experience we're providing. It need the game experience, the in-game production needs to be snappy. It is also another reason to kind of keep that as close to the computer as possible, or to the device. But it's also we do the major issues we have is when we do online seasons, and the players are in different continents. And so that's when we can run into some issues.
That's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Geographic placement of the game server. I mean, that was a huge thing during the pandemic, is trying to figure out, if a team's coming from Los Angeles playing against a team in Korea, where do you put the game server? Do you put it in Hawaii? Do you put it in Japan? What's the connectivity?
Eric, what is your take on the latency, and what can be done, and where are the trends going towards lower the latency for the workflows?
No. So from a software-defined Zixi type perspective, latency is a budget, and as Corey was referencing, you've got different times of different packaging. So in a transport stream level, you can shrink. I mean, if you have a good network connection, you can really lower your latency. If you have a bad network connection, then you need some latency for forward error correction, ARQ, ways to recover the packets, et cetera, et cetera. But HLS packaging can take 45 to 60 seconds. That's why you see confidence monitoring. We've had clients that have used WebRTC to manually watch a confidence monitor and know where to insert ads. Kind of fun to watch that kind of thing. But latency to an IRD versus latency to a digital writing of a CDN pickup, those are two different paths. I do think when you say gambling, et cetera, we've been working diligently for the last several years on take 5G, and we can get down to 200 milliseconds, 100 milliseconds. We've done those things, but those are very still specific in rolling out. What the industry is going to require feels in the 1, 2, 3 second part. But all of those subject to how long the hops and the paths are. Like we're hearing that there's a server in Asia, there's a server in Europe, but fundamentally, how do you synchronize that? So you can manage the quality of service of the stream with a latency budget. Sports and betting will, of course, want it less, but then ultimately, how can you synchronize that too? Because you have to have windows of delivery. You can't deliver it to this person, this target 1 second, and that target at 3 seconds. So aligning all of that, and kind of goes back to some of the other things we touched on, but I think that latency will become one of the bigger pieces. We use AI and ML in our intelligent data platform, and the idea that latency is a critical element because it not only shows when the time the signal is delivered, but it also tends to be an indicator, canary in the coal mine, if you will, on network health, signal path, signal health. So latency is a dynamic physics that you have to run through and monitor it. And I would say, while everybody in the vendor world will say low latency, I would really challenge people to say, well, how do you measure that? How do you really measure that? And how do you prove it? So leave that there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that he just made. That's important for people to understand as part of that planning process, right? And understanding the variables and things that are inherently by nature involved with latency. And that's part of that planning and deciding WebRTC, SRT, right? Different protocols from an IP base on that contribution into the process, and really understanding the workflow so that you can get a gauge as to understand what you may be working with. And I think there's a lot of areas that you have to really kind of think about, plan it, and test it to validate, make sure the workflow is going to deliver what needs to happen.
Yeah. So maybe we should round off with a final word from each of you, where you see the future of cloud is taking us, and where do you see what's happening with the next couple of months? Start with you, Martin. Where do you see the future moving?
I really am looking forward to watching the software-defined TV production happening. I think we have some real interesting times ahead of us in that area.
Eric, you're always nodding when Martin speaks. It feels like you're in the same neighborhood when it comes to esports and these type of things. Where do you see the future of cloud infrastructure workflows?
Well, I would say that the finally adoption, and I would dovetail to Martin, it will be very interesting to see as cloud production. And the minute you have cloud production, you have difference on cloud distribution. So 2024 is some of our more traditional receivers and takers of content. The OTT folks have been getting this just fine for a long time. Kicking and screaming, our good old friends in the MVPD world will receive IP signals and television will unify.
Jonas, when are you fully cloud-based in Brazil?
Maybe till the next World Cup, because every World Cup is almost 4 years of roadmap. Just kidding, but I believe that for like Martin said, the microservice for all the broadcast pieces is good. So to have this on a more mature way in the cloud. But I'm looking at how we can leverage a lot of new business when you're having this in the cloud and using all the AI services that are being developed in the market. We had a great panel yesterday here about AI in the streaming, and I believe that this is going to be a game changer for the next 10 years.
John, what do you see in the crystal ball, and where do you see the next steps coming?
So I agree. I think what I'm excited about is I think we're still focusing on the distribution, kind of like we covered a little bit, and what are the elements that support that distribution model. I'm excited about the advances being made. I think another market space that doesn't get talked about too much, but is becoming fast a contributor towards streaming and production is the podcast market, right? And I'm excited to see where these technologies, where we automate, we make it more efficient, where traditional shows, I think software-defined television or whatever have you to produce it, is exciting. Some of the new tools that are coming out in the industry now to support taking what traditionally people would be viewing the content on their TV, moving it to some, and the podcast market is a huge one, the creator type universe. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I'm excited about that technology, the advances in distribution. But yeah, I think that's kind of where I see it right now. And I think AI absolutely is another automation is going to be continue as a whole. So I'm excited to see how that evolves.
So final words, Corey, what's your take on the future of cloud workflows?
I think this question, it deserves its own panel, to be honest. I think from our perspective, we're already living in a software-defined television production world. We're going to continue to tackle latency and optimizations, both in the cost and how we operate. I think that there's an opportunity for us to continue to grow confidence in our television production muscle, so to speak, by getting reps on the cloud-based platform and showing the advantage of switching a show in cloud versus constantly hauling a truck around. And I think that those are conversations that everybody's having at their shops, whether or not it's a broadcast engineer that's been doing this the same way for 50 years and they want to keep doing it for that 50 years. But at some point, there's going to be a new generation of folks that come in that don't understand the traditional linear model and how broadcast has been operating the last 6 years, and they want to go to new kind of innovative type of ways of consuming video. And I think we have to start looking seriously about how we program ourselves to adapt to that world where my son will never have a cable subscription. He'll never have a satellite subscription. I think that he gets a lot of his information from YouTube and TikTok and a lot of these other different platforms. And that is the kind of the future of consumption of entertainment and sports and everything else. So we as broadcasters have to evolve our tips and tricks in our bag to meet the demand of that market. Otherwise, we're not going to have any eyeballs watching our content. And so, in short, I'm hopeful that, AI becomes a tool, that we can kind of like slice and dice some of this content up and deliver it to those audiences. But at the same time, we still have this gap between the transition of television viewers today, but it's a completely different world. So figuring that particular piece out is going to help us drive revenue for the future. So I'm excited that 2024 is going to be a learning and growing year for us in the industry. And, the tools are obviously going to get better, and, we'll, hopefully, not age out too quickly before we see the eventual finish line that we've all kind of started over the last 10 years.
Excellent. I saw Eyevinn popping up before, so hi, Eyevinn.
About that. How are you? That was a great panel. I'm actually sorry and ashamed to have to cut it off, but you know what? You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So thanks for a great panel. Everybody, really just brilliant stuff. Lots to think about, and you're right. It probably deserves its own conference. Thanks everybody for sticking around for this. This was obviously one of the great panels that we're going to have today. The winner of our music contest was Stephen Pulido, and the track, of course, was Peter Gunn theme of The Art of Noise, featuring Dwayne Eddy. Very famous track. Thanks, everybody. We've got stuff all day long. Steve, I'm sure, put the agenda in the link. We'll see you in a little while for the next panel. Thanks, everybody. Great job.
Thank you. Bye.